It is Sunday morning and Lizzie wants to know what's in my toolbox. Here we go. So this toolbox is the result of 20 years of cursing and blasphemy and profanity, resulting from not being able to find a tool when I want it. So I've gone through a couple of different toolboxes and tool bags and means of organising bits and pieces. And this one seems to be the answer, I think, for me, just having a series of drawers. So this thing's pretty cheap. It looks a bit like those kind of mechanics tool sets. I think it came as a set with a trolley, which is in the garage. I don't think this is more than sort of 40 odd quid's worth, so it's not the best quality, but it does the job. Top lifts up, in terms of the top of it, can you see what's in there? A little bit of a mess. But I've got my DeWalt set of drills essentially. I've got, let's take a couple of bits out, quick bit of space, obviously charger, triple batteries. It's a few years old now. Must have had this for a good 7 years. So there's better systems out there now, but that's a 4-amp 18-volt system. It comes with torch, certainly handy in the house. This is an impact driver. I think a lot of people confuse it. It's small and compact and relatively lightweight, but it only has one function, and that is for hammering screws into wood, I guess, or whatever else. But yeah, not to be confused with a screwdriver, some sort of electronic screwdriver. It's a powerful bit of kit, and it's very easy to overdo it, snapping heads off of screws and punching through things. So a serious bit of kit, and not something I typically use in the house all that often, but nice to have if I'm doing jobs outside of the house, etc. And then I opted, when I built, spec the kit, and I've got circular saws, jigsaws, rip saws, various bits and pieces that came. I've got a battery powered angle grinder that's in the garage, but I did spec. They do various specs. This is the DCD 985. It's a metal chuck there. I do see a lot of them with plastic chucks. They tend to be lighter weight. This is quite heavy, not something you want to use as an electric screwdriver frequently, because just of the weight of it. By the time I've got a battery on there as well, there's some heft on that. I guess maybe a quick magnetic bit on the side. Most of them do that. Makita, DeWalt. There's probably some others. If you're getting into new tools, there's other ones, but this is a pretty good range. I'll just run through the settings on that. So that gives you there's three icons on the top there. That's a screw, that's a drill, and that's a hammer. So the screw setting, and that's altered by twisting that lock ring. The screw setting is your screwdriver setting, and that also then engages the numbers. And this is a clutch I should say, not a chuck, a clutch system that if I set it to the weakest, I can. So it's clicking, it's slipping, the clutch is letting go. It's on the loosest setting, so it's only going to go very slowly, and it enables you to control your screwing. So if I tighten it up a bit more, get more and more pressure on the screw head to the point where I can barely hold it now. I can barely hold it. So that's the screwdriver setting. It's also got speed settings: 1, 2, and 3. 3 being the fastest, so you've got more control. Then you've got screwing, so that disengages this. It'll just go full screw. And then of course this one has what I did want is the hammer setting for drilling into masonry, etc., which I can't do by holding it, but we'll do the same as this device and put percussion behind it. So that's the kit in the toolbox, so to speak. Get it all back in. And then it's other odds and sods, primarily focused on what's in what's kind of required around the house. Quite often, a set of Allen keys. Pick them up along the way. Very useful. I've got a few odds and there's just some packers in there from some other job I was probably doing recently. A set of spade head bits. They're a bit old and rusty, these ones now, but they clip in for drilling holes in wood. I've got a set down the bottom. What else have we got? Selection of tapes, electrical tapes, PTFE tape for plumbing. Got 2-part epoxy resin. some old credit cards, some mitre bond, otherwise known as super glue. And I've got a selection of screwdrivers. So I've got the range in the blue of the sort of Phillips or Posse head screwdrivers, flathead, and then I've actually got a selection of little stubbies which come in handy as well. So there's a range of sizes, obviously, which I think you can see. In this one, I've got Torx and a few other odds and sods. So they're the kind of star pattern. I'll find a big one. They range in size, but that head useful for taking apart electronic bits and pieces. Something breaks, the Hoover stops working. You know, they're the kind of screws that you find in there to get something apart. A few bits and pieces. There's a few. So I've got a set of wall plugs, the odds and sods, and a selection of bits, predominantly masonry bits. They're all masonry bits. There's one HSS wood bit, little bit there, and of course I've got a selection. I'd have to go into the garage. Then a few. I mean, that's getting a bit old now. Probably don't use that anymore. But yeah, and then selection of Posse bits for the screwdriver. Spare bits and pieces like that.
What do you use them for, Phil?
For screwing, fair enough. For putting screws on the wall. So I mean, wall plugs, obviously drilling into masonry, popping a wall plug in the wall. All different stuff out there depending on what you're drilling into and what you're fixing. A few bits and pieces in here, mainly pencil sharpener. I've got some earplugs. I've got a trusty radiator Allen key. That is a bit dicey, but there's again a pack of Stanley blades in there, and that is a Stanley scraper, quite a useful tool for around the house. I've got a set of, I just did.
What would you use that Stanley scraper for?
Well, I mean, for you know, you tell me. I don't know. Glass shower. I've even used it. You know, taken the lime scale off of glass shower screens. Yeah, any number of things. Yeah, but can't quite think exactly what I'll be using it for now. A couple of Sharpie pens, pencils, rubber. These I forget what they call these. Yeah, there was a name for these. Yes, it's basically like a silicone. Instead of using your finger for wiping silicone into, you know, if you're doing around the bathtub, you know, you've got a set of different sized and profiled formers for pressing in and dealing with silicone. I use them quite frequently. I've done all of that, haven't I? Top drawer, electrician's drawer, I guess. I've got a decent set I've invested in of, I think mainly they're a CK brand. They're rated so that it's essentially protected, so that you're not, you know, if I do slip, put my hand on something live and put the screwdriver on something live, these are rated for use with electrical systems. Very important bit. I have got one of those, but I don't really trust it as well as I trust something a bit like an old school. But that actually has a little light bulb in it, inside of it, and there's I wouldn't say it's a button, but a contact, and that is able to, up to a certain voltage, I think about 400, I don't know, maybe less, but that will tell you if you've got a live circuit, so you're able to touch a bit of wire or a circuit. If it's live, it'll light up. Very handy for keeping an eye on things. Just a few odds and sods around that I've left in here, but of course then it's set of side cutters. These are great, and for stripping cable, various bits and pieces. Really useful. They're probably the newest ones that I've bought. I've got an old school set, big set of cutters, a set of pliers I could do with a set of needle nose. But yeah, that's the electrician's drawer, if you like. Odds and sods now. We've got a few bits and pieces. I've got a junior hacksaw, some cable ties. That's a plasterboard saw. I've got a long reach Phillips screwdriver, very handy. There's another set of old pliers in there. Oh, there's a set of needle nose, but I wouldn't be using those for work with electric because they're not rated and protected, etc. So my dad gave me them. They're antiques. A set of grips, I guess, for pincers for pulling nails and tacks. Again, definitely older than me. There's a carpenter's square, quite handy. Yeah, slide and square. This one I find really useful. Set of vernier scales, I guess, are calipers. And the arm zero that. For gauging accurate measurements, got a bit of the depth gauge on the end, various different, in and out for picking up measurements. I'm using that quite frequently. Surprisingly handy bit of kit. Last drawer is the biggest drawer. It's a bit of a catch-all for junk. Probably need a new one. There's we're in the UK, so 8 metre and metric and imperial, very useful, inches and centimetres. If you buy one in the States, I don't think you get centimetres at all on a lot of them. They will just work in inches. So and that one's a decent size, 8 metres. Probably wouldn't get less than 8 metres because the next one down would be 5 metres, and you start to run out of steam. They don't like to be extended all the way. Putty knife, putty blade. Looks like a putty blade, but isn't. Very different. That one's a scraper, effectively, and that one's got a flex in it for applying polyfiller and the work and the lights. Masking plate, Stanley blade. Blades in the hilt. You unscrew that. There's a few spare ones in there. Safety first. Set goggles. Need a new set. Scratch them up. I've got a laser level. Might see us using that, and a clamp that goes with it. It's very handy for marking lines on the walls and straight levels. Again, got a small, I think they call that a torpedo spirit level. And then I've got a couple of hammers, little tack hammer as well, quite handy. I've got the larger of the what ends up being more like a chisel, to be honest. Bashed it about a bit, but wouldn't fit in the drawer, so there's a larger one. That's from an old job. And then just a selection of, I've got some adjustable spanners, some grips, again larger spanner, and that's about it. That's the sort of stuff that I tend to use odds and sods around the house on a fairly frequent basis, or at other people's houses when I get called on to do jobs. And that is the contents of my toolbox.
Thanks, Phil.